Hey, welcome to Cool Wholesaling and Land Deals, Real Talk on Real Estate Investing. I'm Mark Cool, and today we're talking about a few things. A 17-month deal that's been kicking my ass, also a super creative deal that we did with subject to and owner financing that we just closed out a note on, which was a big victory for us. And then I'm going to touch on our CRM switch from Resimpli, and then a quick SMS text marketing update as well. So let's get into it. We'll start off with this deal. I did a post this week called the 17-month deal that's been kicking my ass or something like that. But it's a property that we bought 17 months ago. We bought it subject to, and then it's been vacant for most of that time. We've been paying a mortgage on it and trying to sell it in various ways and had various issues with it. So I made that post. There's some questions about it. I'm going to answer a few questions and just go over the deal as an overview. First, I'll do the overview and then I'll answer the questions. So we bought this deal last year, May 2024. It was a divorce situation and they just wanted to get out of it. They had a mortgage on it, and they had a second mortgage on it. So we took over the first mortgage, which was 100 and I don't know what it was, 115 or so. I don't have the numbers in front of me. And we paid off a second mortgage. It was around 10. And then we paid the sellers about $5,000 to, just give them some walking away money. And we were all in on it around 140, 142K, somewhere in there. And at that time, we thought the retail value was around 210. So we thought we were in good shape with multiple options to exit that deal. Starting with a lipstick remodel, type flip there wasn't a lot of major stuff. It was just all cosmetic stuff. So we thought we might sell it to a flipper who just wanted to go in there and do some paint and touch ups and some minor repairs and then put it back on the market. We weren't able to find that person. The next exit strategy was to owner finance it out to an individual buyer who was handy, like a handyman special, right? And then the third strategy was to rent it out if we weren't able to do those things and do the repairs ourselves. Um, so yeah, here's the questions on it based on the post. The deal that you kicking your ass for 17 months. What went wrong from the start? I would say what went wrong from the start. Two things that I can think of off the top of my head. One, this deal is way out in the country, right? And those are more challenging deals to sell. It's harder to comp them. Investors feel less confident when there aren't good comps, and also people are less likely to buy way out in the country. It's not for everyone to live on an acre lot with a 20 to 25-minute commute to the nearest major town. So that was an issue, and we probably got it priced a little bit too high, but with the flexibility to potentially rent it. And, at the time we thought we had, 60 to 70,000 in built-in equity there. So even if you have 20 or 30 or 40,000 repairs, there's still meat on the bone. So we thought we were okay on that, but we might have still priced it, given too much. We couldn't really give any less and still do the deal because we had the two mortgages. Um, and then we had 5,000 to the seller, which, we're not really going to discount the seller. Oh, we can only give you 2,000, right? They're basically giving us their house. Um, so you've written about this deal being a learning experience and what not to do. What's the number one mistake you made? I think the number one mistake we made was waiting too long to pivot on this. The number two mistake would be dealing with some contractors who weren't very good. We had an HVAC contractor who told us we needed an entirely new system there, and we didn't. I was able to go fix that for $80 in parts and a few hours of my time. So we were thinking for a number of months that we needed a new HVAC system, and we were kind of putting it off because we didn't want to spend $8,000 on a new system. And then when I finally went down there and looked at it, we were able to fix it. So when you're dealing with remote flips or remote properties, finding trustworthy contractors is a big one. And that was a lesson, right? Just like make sure somebody's trustworthy or referred or get multiple opinions. And we did get another opinion, but the other guy said that it was the circuit breaker and then he fixed the circuit breaker and it wasn't it. But how much does this deal cost you in time, money, and mental energy over 17 months? Um, yeah, so it's $850 mortgage, and then if $50 in electric per month, so $900 a month in cost. plus some miscellaneous repairs and people going out there to take photos and do various things, mowing the lawn, right? So 17 months times $900 is $17,000, somewhere in the $15,000 to $17,000 range it's cost us to keep this thing going. And fortunately, like I said, we had a cushion, so we're still going to be okay in the end. But mental energy, it's a big drain to have a deal that's vacant. And then part of why it's been vacant for so long is because we've had a couple people say they were going to buy it and then fall out, or we had a delay because of the HVAC and waiting to set aside $8,000 to fix it and then finding out we didn't need to do that. But yeah, it's a big energy drain when you have a property that's just sitting there vacant and you're just paying money out on it every month. Definitely. Where does this deal stand right now? Are you closer to a resolution or still stuck? That's a good question. We went out there last week and we did some repairs. We cleared out a bunch of junk. We got things prepped for flooring. We got paint estimates. We're going to now pivot and rent it. So it's, I'd say, anywhere between 3 and 6 weeks out from being rented. We just have to get the paint done and get the flooring stuff done, do a few other touch-ups, and we'll be ready to rent it out. And we've got it up on Zillow for rent. So we've gotten some applications, and that will be a resolution within the next 3 to 6 weeks, I would say. What would you tell yourself of 17 months ago if you could go back? That's a good question too. What would I tell myself? I'll tell myself to make a decision faster on this thing and not let it sit for so long. That's crazy that we let it sit for so long. Like I said, the HVAC thing, the unknown of that was a big one. So we just needed to roll up our sleeves and get, multiple estimates on that and find out for sure before we just believed the first guy and felt like we had to set aside $8,000 for that. So make decisions faster and be more thorough with the contractors and the estimates. That's what I would tell myself 17 months ago. For someone who's in the middle of a deal going sideways, what's your advice for knowing when to cut losses versus push through? Um, I would say cut your losses sooner rather than later. If you see something going sideways, it's better to cut your losses and move on to the next deal than to continue to pay out, unless you're in a situation where you do have a lot of meat on the bone, you do have a cushion, which, we squandered a little bit in this situation. We knew we had extra equity to work with, and so maybe we delayed longer than we should have. But I would say sooner rather than later, make a decision, get it done. But if you have multiple exit strategies, maybe you have a little bit more leeway, right? I think that's the main stuff. Those are the questions we had on that deal. But if you want to know more about that, I did a post on my blog, markcool.org. I think it's called something like the 17-month deal or something like that. Next topic is text marketing update. We'll do a brief text marketing update because people like to hear about our numbers and what's working, not working. So for text this week, we're using Smarter Contact. We sent out 37,000 texts. We got a 7% response rate on that. We pushed 36 leads out of that. So that is a little less than one lead for every 1,000 texts sent. And I would qualify that by saying that we have a standard for when we push a lead. We don't just push somebody who says, make me an offer, or, yes, I want to sell. We make sure they have two positive responses before we push a lead. So yes, I want an offer. Okay, great. What's your asking price, or what were you thinking about getting for that? Or do you mind answering a few questions about the property? And we give them a little questionnaire, age of the roof, age of the, HVAC, et cetera. If somebody is engaging and has at least two positive responses, then we push that lead. But if they're just like, yes, I want an offer, or send me an offer, or whatever, we don't do that if they're not engaging. So people's numbers for what a lead is could be different, right? We're pushing 31, what we would call warm leads, qualified, by that two-step or two positive response standard. And then as far as what we're doing, we're using Smarter Contract. These are all house lists. This is no land that we did this week. It's all houses. It's a big list. We're using 7 different filters with pre-foreclosure and absentee and tired landlords, and we're just kind of lumping it all in there. Elderly, et cetera. And then we just pull a big list and we send that whole thing out. And we're using Deal Machine right now for our lists. And right now, like I said, we had a 7% response rate this week. That's kind of what we've been getting, somewhere in that 6 to 8% range overall in the last 4 to 6 weeks that we've been using the Deal Machine data. We might get slightly better results if we were using Direct Skip or Skipify or some of these other data companies, but our business crashed over the last few months. We're on the comeback now, but our business totally crashed and we ran out of money in like June, July, August range. And we cut a lot of our expenses to the bone, including our marketing budget. So Deal Machine was the cheapest data we could find, and we're getting a pretty good response for it, on it. And yeah, so I think that's everything on the SMS text. If you have any questions about text messaging, text marketing, feel free to drop them in the comments and we'll include them in the next episode. So let's talk about this other deal. This one's kind of crazy. I don't know if I can do a whiteboard on this, but maybe I'll try. I don't know how to do whiteboards on Zoom. Anyway, this deal is a deal we bought for 80, sold for 100. So that's a 20K profit. But there was a whole lot of in between there, right? So we've got a mortgage that we took over subject to. We've got that we got the seller to finance a portion of their equity, and then we sold it on seller financing to a buyer. And the big victory on this for us this week, part of why I'm including it, is that we paid off the seller the note that we owed her. It was a 1-year balloon for 23,000 to the seller, and its due date coincided with our business completely crashing. And I had sort of written that note with confidence because we were closing, an average of 4 deals a month for the last 2 years and making a good amount of money. And I was like, yeah, in 12 months time, we'll be able to set aside 23,000 and pay her off, right? But then we had this major downturn this year, and we had, when the note came due, we had nothing to pay this woman off with. We were not even paying salaries to me and my brother, to the two partners in the business for multiple months in a row. We had only been paying the team and paying our expenses. And so we didn't have $23,000 to pay her. And so we had to just communicate with her and be like, hey, this is going to be a little bit delayed. We had a couple of deals that we thought were going to close that didn't, which is true. We had a $20,000 profit deal that ended up having title issues that killed it. And then we had another one that was whatever, 12,000, and that also had title issues. It was delayed. It eventually closed, but it didn't close in time to put money towards paying her off. And we had sort of earmarked those deals to pay her off. So anyway, I'll go into the numbers on this deal a little bit because it's kind of fun. And hopefully if you're a nerd like I am about deals, you'll appreciate it. Let's see if I can share my screen here. And we'll just break it down, try and keep it fairly brief here. Screen share. I'm just going to open up Google Docs and do it that way. There we go. We'll call this one Patton Street. And I'll blow this up a little bit. Let's make this bigger. So we got this thing under contract for 80K in April of 2024. Forgive my typing. I'm not a great typist, and I'm going to take this highlight stuff out of here. And then we were having a hard time selling it. We thought that the retail was around 120, but we had a bunch of flippers and other people say, no, there's not enough meat on the bone there for me to do that. And they were offering us, our best offers were right around our contract price, 75 to 80. So we were kind of in trouble because we delayed with the seller, and we didn't get back to her right away and say we needed a price reduction because we were not getting much response from people. So we didn't feel like we could get a price reduction. So we kept pushing forward and trying to find like an individual buyer that we could sell it to, who would do it as a handyman special or something. and we did an open house on it even. And that's actually where we found our final buyer. So this deal had a first buyer that came in uh, June 3rd, buyer one, right? And he was going to buy it for 100K, and then he fell out. He found there was a gas tank underneath the house during his inspection. I guess maybe they were heating this thing with mineral oil or something, and that spooked him. And he said, "I'm not doing this deal." And then we were afraid we weren't going to be able to sell it at all because of that. But then we did an open house later on, and we did find another buyer who we signed a contract with in July. I think it was like July 7, buyer two, and he's also going to do this for 100K and he's going to do it on owner financing with 15K down, which is great. Gives us some cash, right? No, I'm sorry, he did 10K down. I'm thinking all the numbers here. So I'm writing this up. And so the thing with this is we originally thought we were going to do this on, just as a straight assignment. So we had told the seller she was getting cash. So now I have to go back to the seller, right? And say, because she's freaking out. She's now, you know, April, mid-April. I think this was like April 14th was the contract, right? Um, so she's now May, June, almost 3 months from when we signed a contract with her. She's already moved into a new house and started a new mortgage. She's pissed and she's frustrated, justifiably so. We'd taken way too long. Part of it's on her because her house was worse than she thought it was and or said it was, and it was hard to sell. And there was a gas tank underneath it that nobody knew about her. She said she didn't know about. So I went back to the seller and I said, "Hey, we can make a deal happen because now we have this buyer for 100K and he's ready to go with owner financing. But here's what we can do. We can give you 12K down and we're going to finance the remaining 23K of your equity. And we're going to take over your mortgage of, I think it's 46K. Let's see if this adds up to 80. Subject to. What do you think of that? Right? So it's 40, 50, 60, 70, 70. Yeah. So maybe it's 45 to get to 80K, right? It's ballpark where we are. And she went for this. She was like, okay, as long as I can get the 12K up front, then she's got some breathing room and we're going to finance the 23K equity and with a 1 year balloon, which is putting a little bit of pressure on us to come up with that money. But we were doing well, we were making money and I was like, yeah, we'd set aside 23K over a year. No big deal. So that means, we're paying her, on this, we're paying her 350 a month and zero interest because she didn't ask for interest and I didn't offer it. That's something I learned from Pace Morby. Um, you know, you don't have to offer interest. You can if you want to, but I was like, let's just do 350 a month. So we're paying down only principal, which is really nice for us over 12 months, right? Because if you're paying compound interest, you're not chipping away the principal as much. So we end up closing this deal with this whole thing. So we got the buyer. I have to explain to him how subject to works because he's buying it owner financing with an underlying loan that's subject to, right? So that's a thing we had to work on. And then with the seller, I had to explain everything to her. She was a little bit nervous about the subject to, still is. I get a lot of phone calls from her, or have gotten a lot of phone calls and emails from her. But this all works out. So we're paying 12K down. The buyer's bringing 10K. So we're only really out of pocket 2,000 at closing, maybe a little bit more with closing costs, just call it 3,000. But our overall profit here is we're buying it for 80 and we're selling it for 100, right? And so our overall, going into the deal profit is around 20K. Like I said, maybe some closing costs and stuff. But the 2K here gets reimbursed, but then closing costs. So anyway, say we're going to make about 20K on it. So that's a pretty nice deal to make 20,000 on a house, right? And now we've paid off this mortgage. So when the mortgage came due, we had paid down enough that we had about 19K due on the seller note, right? And then we weren't able to pay her because we had run out of money. So we had to tell her, can you give us 30 days? She gave us 30 days. We agreed to pay 1% interest on the balance outstanding, right? Over that 30 days. And so she was good with that. And then after 30 days, we still couldn't pay her. Now she's getting a little bit pissed again. And so we're like, okay, we can give you a couple grand now, and we need another 30-day extension. So we did that, included the 1% interest, gave her a couple grand. And then this month in October, we were able to finally pay her off. And so once we paid her off, thank God, like she's paid off. Whoops, trying to do these. Paid off in October. Once she's paid off, now our cash flow picture changes, right? Because this buyer here is paying 1,100 a month because he's financed over 10 years. So he's got 120 payments at 10%. And I know because I just looked at this, he was financing like, it's approximately, after his down payment, he's rolling in the closing costs to his financed amount. So he's financing 91.5K. Whoops, that's 9.5, but he's financing 91.5. So all of this leads to a payment of $1,100, right? So when we're paying this mortgage, the subject to payment on this is 632. So when we were paying her off, we're paying 982, right? So just call it 1,000, and we're making $100 in cash flow, right? Because he's got 1,100 he's paying us, and we're paying out 1,000. So we're making $100 cash flow on this property for this first 12 months, which is nice. It's a little bit of cash flow. That's great. But now that we've paid her off, this 350 that we were paying her now is just coming to us, right? Because now we're paying 632 for the subject to mortgage per month, and 632 a month, right? We're paying that per month, and he's paying us this, right? So we're now making what, 450, 470, whatever. So now we have positive cash flow of $468, let's just say, a month on this, right? But that's not all. Now we have nearly $500, call it 450, whatever, positive cash flow on this. But the interest on this loan, if you amortize this, and we'll share the loan calculator here, he financed 91,499 over 10 years at 10% interest. So I guess he's paying 1,200. So I got this wrong. My bad. We're getting an extra $100 a month. He's paying 145, and he bought it for 100, right? So that means we're making 53, because the down payment, we already made that 10K down payment. So on this 91.4, we're making 53K. So if we go back to the whiteboard, we got to fix this. It's 1,200 a month he's paying, right? And then whatever, I'm not going to recalculate all that stuff. You get the picture. But then the 460K, we get 468 a month, and then the interest income on this is 53K on the financed amount. So in total, we're making the 20K down and the 53K on the interest. And if we knock off a couple for expenses or whatever, we're still making 70K plus on this deal. And that's why it was worth going through all the stress. And again, the 70K, if he pays this loan off early, we're not going to make 70K, right? We're not going to make all the interest. But he's already been paying on it for a year plus. And if he pays 3, 5, 7 years, it's all gravy. So we might not make 70, but if he pays for the entire 10 years, we're making 70. So that's the breakdown of that. Hopefully that's fun for people. I love doing this stuff. This is where I shine in real estate, is putting together creative deals. I have a lot of fun doing it, and it takes some calculating and some creativity, and it also takes some difficult conversations with buyers and sellers, but I find it to be worth it. And there you go. Let's get back to the questions. Any other questions about this deal? Patton Street paid the seller. So I think I covered most of these questions in the calculations and stuff. what made this seller patient enough to work with you instead of taking legal action? I think that goes to rapport. Um, just continuing to communicate in a good way, be respectful, apologetic. We said we would pay it and we couldn't pay it, and we apologized and we gave her some good faith money when we could, and paid her a little bit of interest, and it all worked out in the end. So I'm grateful for that. Um, I broke down the cash flow. That's one question. Now that the seller notice paid off, we broke that down with the breakdown. Looking back at this whole deal, the creative structure, the first buyer falling out, the business crash, the crisis with the seller, would you do it again? I would say, heck yeah, because of the numbers I gave you. Even if this buyer cashed out on us tomorrow, we still had made 20K up front, right? And then um, made a little bit of, cash flow over time on the monthly payments. So if he cashed out tomorrow, we'd still be 20K plus, 20K or more in the black. So heck yeah. And then the longer this deal runs, the more money we're making. I would do it again in a heartbeat, even though it was very difficult and challenging. For wholesalers or investors listening, when does a deal like this make sense versus just doing a traditional assignment or a flip? This deal made sense for us because it was a last resort. It was a Hail Mary. I wouldn't, advocate doing this all the time unless it's fun for you, because it is fun, and it's a way to make deals work that might not work using your other exit strategies, right? So um, I would say when other exit strategies don't work, get creative. Um, this deal shows extreme creativity, subject to seller financing, buyer financing. Do most sellers say yes to structures like this, or was this seller unique? That's a great question, and I would say I've pitched this to a lot of people. My team knows how to pitch this now, so I would say we get a 40% conversion rate. Out of all the people, 30 or 40%. 3 or 4 out of 10 say yes, and a lot of people say no. I don't want to do that, but it's surprising how many people do say yes to it. I would say in my personal experience, just the people I've pitched it to, it's even close to 50%. Um, because especially if you've got a motivated seller and they don't have other exit strategies, and they've got a mortgage or even arrears and they need to make a move, like it works. That's with the subject to. And then when you were 2 months late on the seller note, did you consider worst case scenarios? What were they and how did you manage that stress? Managing the stress is long walks in the woods and breathing and workouts and stuff like that, yoga, meditation. But worst case scenarios are, well, if we don't pay her off, she could sue us, and she could probably get a lien on the property, which is occupied by a guy who bought it from us with owner financing on a subject to. So it gets complicated pretty fast. And yeah, I mean, we were at a place where we thought the whole business might burn to the ground at that point. We didn't have any money and deals weren't closing and we weren't getting paid salaries. So yeah, it was like, maybe we can't pay this woman. Maybe she sues us. Who knows? That wasn't not a fun time, but thankfully we came through it, and she is paid off, and we're making a profit on this deal, and I'm grateful for that. So I think we're done with that deal. If you like deal breakdowns like that, let me know. I can do more deal breakdowns of creative deals or even more basic deals like, assignments that we do or owner financing deals on land, stuff like that. Let me know in the comments. The next topic we have is the CRM switch. We switched from Resimpli back to Podio this week, and I'm just going to touch on a little bit of our experience with Resimpli. We've talked about it some on the podcast before. We've had some listeners who have tried it, and just want to share my experience briefly. For me, I would give them like a 2.5 to 3 out of 10 for their platform. I think it's difficult to learn, and I think the logic is different or doesn't work for my brain. And I think it didn't support our land deals very well. And I don't like the way that they partition buyers and sellers and vendors and each one of those segments of your contacts in your system can only do certain things, and you can only communicate with them with dedicated phone numbers for that category. Like buyers have buyer phone numbers, sellers have seller phone numbers, as opposed to Podio, where we use Just Call or smartphone, and each team member has their own phone number, and you can talk to people, buyers or sellers or whoever you want to, with that phone number. Same thing with like having the buyers segregated, and then you can attach offers to buyers, which is cool. But you can't attach offers to vendors. And if a real estate agent is a vendor and they're making you an offer, then how does that work? That was a frustration. I would say um, the, trying to be positive about something. The integration with the calling and texting is good there. Um, the platform is clean. Visually, it's very clean. Their deal flow is very different than what we experienced on Podio. So they expect you to convert your mindset to the way they see deals flowing. And so if you're doing this like it's your first CRM, it's probably fine because you just get your mindset around how their system works and it might be great. But if you're coming from another platform, then I would say definitely do a trial and see how they think about things and how their deals flow and how they treat leads and everything, because it is different than Podio. It's different than Forefront, which I've used, and I've checked out other platforms too. A big ding against them is their customer service is really poor. Their people are very friendly and very responsive, but they don't know anything. And what they do is they have people who get back to you immediately and say, "We got your message. We're working on it." But then they take a couple of days to work on it in many cases because they're farming out any tech related questions to their team in India who handles that stuff. And they're on a different schedule. They're on in a different time zone. And a lot of the people who respond to you on the platform don't know the answer to your question or how to fix it. And so I found I was more lucky just going to like ChatGPT and asking for answers to my questions than going to their support. We did have one dedicated account representative who was great, and he knew a lot about the platform. And when we got on a Zoom call with him, he was very helpful and he did respond to emails. So I will say that that's great, but they do want you to pay extra for white glove service and for dedicated representatives. So it's not included in your plan. They want you to pay $2,000 for white glove onboarding. They took 3 weeks to get our seller leads onboarded. 3 weeks. I mean, I could format a list and map the fields and upload it in a day or two. I don't know why it took them 3 weeks to figure that out. So that was frustrating. And we did two separate 2 week free trials, and then we did 2 paid weeks also after our second trial. So I've got 6 weeks of experience, and it's not for me, but it might be for somebody who wants an all-in-one solution and who is doing their first CRM, where you're going to just adopt their logic and their um, way of working deals. But I would say definitely do a trial and check it out. And sorry, I can't be kinder with them. I mean, they do have, like I said, the calling and the texting is great. They've got a lot of cool integration and you know, they have a calculator in there for analyzing your deals, which is great. And they have very, very nice fields for, filling in your contacts, stuff like that. I mean, it's a clean user interface. I would say it's nice in that way. And it could be, I'm not saying Podio is great because that's what we have, but Podio has its own foibles, but at least we know how to use it. And that's what we're doing is returning to Podio, but we're having a custom Podio built for us because our other one was broken. And we're going to stick to what we know, but upgrade it. And if you have any questions or thoughts about Resimpli, drop them in the comments and I can answer any questions from my experience, or you can tell me you're having a great experience or anything else. Let me just see if we have any questions on this one. What are you switching to? I already covered that. For wholesalers valuing CRMs, what should they prioritize based on your experience with this switch? That's a good question. I would just say, just prioritize making sure that the platform you're using fits for the way you run your business, right? And that's the one thing about Podio that I like, and I'm not an affiliate of Podio or anything, but my son and I both use it. And one of the reasons we like it is because it is kind of endlessly customizable based on the way you run your business. So you can really make it fit your business like a glove in terms of the apps you use and the workflows you use and the even the fields you have within your apps. Very customizable. Um, and that's a good thing. So I would say just make sure that the CRM you choose it fits your business and the way you work. And after that, let's go on to the next topic, what I'm reading, watching, listening to. What I'm listening to, Gary Vee, a lot of content about him and social media and how social media is changing and how AI is coming into the picture and all that stuff. I really like his knowledge about social media and marketing and his vision about it. I listened to Jack Canfield on Tim Ferriss this week, and that was a great episode. Jack Canfield is the author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul books, and it's just a great story about how he got declined by like 120 publishers before he got that book made. And then the publisher told him they were lucky, he'd be lucky to sell 20,000 copies. And he said he wanted to sell 1.5 million within the first year and a half, and he did it. And it was pretty crazy. Like him and his partner were just going on like 5 interviews a day and doing 5 actions a day, and they called it the rule of five. He's just a really great uh, wealth of knowledge as far as mindset and coaching and personal growth, goal setting, all that stuff. So I really enjoyed listening to that interview, and I'd recommend it. Tim Ferriss is always great. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. And thanks for listening to Real Talk on Real Estate Investing. If you found today's episode valuable, drop a comment or question. I read them all and I use them, use all the questions for future episodes. You can find more real estate investing content on my website, markcool.org. I've also got some products and resources in my store. My email link is there too. If you want to contact me, it's at the bottom of every page of my website. And then I think that's it for today. Until next time, keep the faith and keep moving forward.